Okay, I'm Sergeant Lance Kraut from West Manchester Township Police Department. Today, the West Manchester Township Police, along with the York County District Attorney's Office and the York County Coroner's Office, after more than a decade of investigation, would like to announce that we have officially identified the unknown skeletal remains connected to a homicide case. The remains were discovered 13 years ago at Loucks Road and Haviland Road in West Manchester Township. Through DNA analysis and forensic genealogy, we have now confirmed the victim's identity, providing some long-awaited answers in this case. The deceased in this case is a David Anthony Queen, age 42, from Baltimore, Maryland, who went missing on November 6, 2006. He was last seen by family heading to work at McDonald's on Falls Road from his residence at 2815 Violet Avenue in Baltimore, Maryland. His mother reported him missing on December 8, 2006. From 2013 until 2020, it was believed our victim was a Caucasian or Hispanic based on all available testing and reports that we had at that time. Starting in April of 2020, it was discovered through advanced DNA testing for the DNA Doe Project that we found our victim was not Caucasian, but actually African American. With this new information, DNA Doe Project compared DNA profiles with available genealogy data to locate the potential relatives of this victim. We have notified the victim's family, who have been awaiting this information on their loved one since he went missing in 2006. We are hoping this breakthrough renews the momentum in this homicide investigation and may generate new leads. I cannot thank DNA Doe Project enough for their efforts since they took this case on 7 years ago for us, especially volunteers like Jenny Lekis, Tracy Boyle, Emily Steinauer, and our current project leader, Tracy Anders, who's here today. We are asking anyone who may have been friends or acquaintances with David or co-workers with him, we ask them to contact the West Manchester Township Police Department and speak to Detective Sergeant Conway, who will now be heading up this investigation. Any information is vital to this case as we try to bring this killer to justice. I'd like to now ask Tracy Anders to come up and speak.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Tracy Anders, and I serve as the Director of Case Management for the DNA Doe Project. I also had the privilege of serving as one of the team leaders on this case. The DNA Doe Project is a nonprofit organization founded in 2017 with one mission: to use investigative genetic genealogy to identify those that have died without the dignity of having a name. In cases like this, restoring identity is also a first step towards justice. Today, West Manchester John Doe has a name, and that name is David Anthony Queen. David was 42 years old and had been reported missing from Baltimore in December 2006. His remains were discovered here in West Manchester Township in November 2013. The DNA Doe Project became involved in this case over 6 years ago, and from the beginning, we knew it would be a difficult case. David's closest relative match shared only 1.7% of DNA with him, and the remaining matches were significantly more distant. But DNA also gave us one crucial piece of new information. When the remains were discovered, this John Doe was thought to be Caucasian. His genetic profile indicated that he was of African American descent. That finding changed the direction of our research and gave us a much better understanding of the family that we were looking for. DNA did not give us David's name. It gave us distant DNA relatives and clues. Our volunteer investigative genetic genealogists spent hundreds of hours building family trees, studying DNA relationships, and following generations of families through North Carolina, Virginia, Louisiana, and Maryland. Over time, Baltimore emerged as an important part of the story. On Christmas Eve 2025, our research finally led us to David Queen. His family connections fit the DNA evidence, and his ancestry connected back to North Carolina. We could find no evidence he was still alive. We provided David's name to Sergeant Lance Kraut as a possible lead. Less than 2 weeks later, his investigation uncovered a critical piece of information that our genealogy research could not. David Queen had been reported missing from Baltimore nearly 20 years earlier. Further DNA testing ultimately confirmed his identity. I think this distinction is important. Investigative genetic genealogy did not solve this case by itself. The identification happened because persistent genealogy work was paired with persistent police work by Sergeant Lance Kraut. For us, identity is one of the most basic elements of human dignity. David Queen was never simply a skeleton or a case number. He was a human being with a history, a family, and a life that mattered. I'm incredibly proud of the volunteers who refused to give up when the matches were distant and the answers were not obvious at all. I'm also deeply grateful to Sergeant Kraut and the West Manchester Township Department for their commitment to restoring David's identity and to this case. Today, David Anthony Queen has his name back, and it's been an honor to play part in that. May he rest in peace, and our thoughts are with his family during this difficult time.
Good morning. I'm District Attorney Tim Barker, and one thing that I hope becomes very clear and very apparent is that we will never rest as a community until we are able to produce answers and produce truth. That's what you've heard and what you've seen so far today. The fact that through the diligent work that has existed from the West Manchester Township Police Department, especially under the investigative lead of Sergeant Kraut, as well as the great partnership that they have had with the DNA Doe Project, has led us to identifying a victim. Something that, quite frankly, for many years, was unknown if we would be able to do so. But when you continue to apply the resources, to continue to dig, to continue to look at where answers could be, to not accepting just one answer as being the answer, and never accepting no, you will lead to the truth. And ultimately, that is the hallmark of everything involving criminal investigation and criminal justice. Mr. Queen's family needed the truth. They needed to know what happened to him. This was a missing persons case out of Baltimore for now 2 decades. They now know what happened to their son, to their loved one, to their friend. The next phase now is active, which is who killed Mr. Queen. We know that this is a homicide. The forensic testing that occurred previously, of which we will not go into further details regarding that because some of these matters are critical investigative matters that we need to go ahead and keep as part of the scope of the criminal investigation. But we were able to determine that this was a homicide. With that determination that this was a homicide, now the continued digging, the continued review, the continued investigation concerning what happened to Mr. Queen will continue to take place. This, of course, has already been underway by the West Manchester Township Police Department from the moment that they were able to get confirmation concerning who the individual was. This type of investigation, though, into who killed him and the other details surrounding that would be greatly aided by further cooperation from the community. Not just the York County community, but also looking down to where he was from. Being a missing person reported from Baltimore, having that assistance from the Baltimore community. This is a member, Mr. Queen is a member of the Baltimore community. And it is important for us in York County to provide these solutions and this truth and pursue this justice for everyone who is a part of the Baltimore community where Mr. Queen was from. That is what's going to occur. Our office, the West Manchester Township Police Department, we will not rest, we will not stop until we get to this truth. And we are going to see justice all the way through. Yes, there have been some delays because we needed some basic answers first. And technology, with its continued evolution and the devotion from different agencies and entities, like the DNA Dope Project, to find answers like this, have so greatly assisted us. And now we continue forward. Justice will never, ever rest. There may be pauses, there may be delays. Sometimes we can get the truth in a day, sometimes a month, sometimes a year, sometimes 30 years. We have seen all of that occur in York County. But through it all, we have obtained truth and sought justice, and in the end, obtained that justice within our criminal justice system. We will do so again here, but we again emphasize, if you know anything about what happened to David Anthony Queen, please reach out and contact the West Manchester Township Police Department. Sergeant Conway will now be the lead investigator in this case. Please refer questions and please refer answers to Detective Sergeant Conway if you know anything or have any further aspects to provide. And I can't emphasize this enough. You may think that what you know is a small detail. There is no such thing as a detail too small. It may mean something quite larger based upon all the information we have. But if you provide the information, we will pursue it and we will factor it in to our investigation. And I am confident that with the cooperation of the York County and the Baltimore communities, we will solve this homicide and we will have the ultimate answers and provide ultimate truth and justice that can be achieved through our human criminal justice system. And with that, we are prepared to take some questions. I would again note that there are certain things that we cannot reveal. We are not revealing the identity of Mr. Queen's family. This is information that clearly they have to process, and they have been, and those communications have been occurring. We have nothing but respect for them. Therefore, we will not be releasing or revealing any further information regarding Mr. Queen's family. Yes?
Can you say what a general about that and when you think he passed away?
I believe we stated previously about the missing persons report from 2006. And so with that being a missing persons report going back to them, that's the general time frame that we will leave at this point in time. But that's how long back the missing persons report goes to.
You don't know that he died after that or
We're starting with 2006 and the missing persons report as our timeline. There is further forensic information that we do have that was processed that helps to provide some further ranges and aspects like that, but utilizing the known missing persons report as a starting point for a general timeline is a very sound and very strong investigative way to go ahead and approach this.
Have you determined if he has any ties to York County or to West Manchester or to anyone up here?
So I'll turn that over to Sergeant Kraut, but by simply starting off by saying this, that there have been investigations into what those ties potentially could be overall. The depth and scope of that investigation we need to keep confidential at this point, and there's a good reason for doing so. Too much information revealed prematurely can go ahead and cause complications to an investigation. And we are looking to receive information at this point from the community. Once it's all received, then that can translate into providing more information back to the community. But I'll turn the rest over to Sergeant Kraut.
I mean, there is nothing at this point in time that's obvious to us as to why he would have been here in York County. That's something that the investigators are going to be taking this over, are going to have to start looking at and working through as they talk to the family members.
Yes.
Are there any leads or on who you're pursuing from the perpetrator or evidence found at the crime scene while after you're pursuing?
So we'll just state this. There are certain things we know from the crime scene. There are certain things we know from the thorough evaluation by multiple experts concerning the remains of Mr. Queen. And there are further things that have been learned since his identity has been fully confirmed and revealed regarding where he lived, who he may have had as his associates, what different communications could have existed. However, we're going to leave it capped at that because of the ongoing nature of the investigation. We do not want to disclose prematurely information regarding what those potential associations could be, as well as some of the information from the scene and what that revealed that could be extra telling to anyone who could be a person of interest. Yes?
Do you believe that he was killed where he was found or left there?
So we'll just put it this way, it is something that is not ruled out. There are more than one possibility with regards to that at this point in time. But that is absolutely within the scope of probabilities, but we'll leave it at that for right now. And that is some further information that now that we have his identity, that it's assisting us to go ahead and further explore. Yes?
Since he was missing since 2006, found in 2014, are you able to go into give any type of insight to what happens next with a case this old, like what the investigation looks like?
So I know a couple of things that we'll be able to say that we have at our disposal. And then I'll have Sergeant Kraut answer some further things with some general steps of investigative aspect, again, without giving too much away. But what you do is you learn of and track down anyone and everyone that could be a known associate. So you go ahead and you explore every kind of record that exists that would be of a personal nature to the victim. You explore all those aspects. You talk with family. You identify friends. You find out everything that they were doing, people that they would have known, where they would have been, normal courses of travel, all kinds of matters like that. You look at every kind of record that could be out there in existence. And another thing that can wind up happening as well is you can use other investigative tools. It's premature to discuss whether or not an investigating grand jury would be a potential tool, but that is always something that is potentially there for cold cases. We find that investigating grand juries and matters like this actually work incredibly well in assisting in identifying further information, further evidence. We have not committed to that course of investigation. These are, again, answers to, general answers to those questions. We do not want to reveal some specific things that we know that we want to do, because we do not want to give the advantage to the individuals that are persons of interest. But that's, generally speaking, some items. Sergeant Kraut, do you have some further items too?
I mean, I just say that I'm the forensic specialist for the department, so my job was to find the identity of David. And now at this point, I would let anything up to Detective Conway as far as where he's going to go from here to speak on that.
So I'm Detective Sergeant Conway, West Manchester Township Police. As Sergeant Kraut and District Attorney Barker have stated, I will now be taking over as the lead investigator in this homicide case. And really the only further answer I can give would be to restate what District Attorney Barker has already said, which is we have developed some information, but quite frankly, this is the next step in the process, is to appeal to those who knew David and who spent time with David, to strengthen that information and give us some additional places to look. To answer an earlier question that I believe was somewhat covered, it was asked if he had any known ties or connections to this area. What I can state is he did not have a known history with this agency. This is not someone who was known to any of the members of this police department. So it is not one where we can say, okay, yes, I knew this person, I know he frequented this establishment, or this is where he stayed, or this is who he spent time with. So those are the things we're just beginning to develop, and again, seeking assistance from communities both here and in Baltimore to help us further that development. You were faster.
Do you know if he got to work that day that he was last seen
I can't say that we know that for certain, but we are assuming no based on the circumstances. Yes.
Was there kind of a single light bulb moment that went off that, oh, this is him, this is David?
I can tell you, in the years that I've been doing this investigation, I learned one thing with it is don't put all your eggs in one basket, okay? We used multiple different agencies. I used Penn State College for assistance. I used University of South Florida. We used Mercyhurst. I used the University of Arizona for testing on stuff within this case. And there was no one single discipline that was able to point me to David Queen, okay? And science, some of this stuff was science. It is science, but it's not always exact. And we had to kind of take what we could with it and look at it as an overall picture of what we have, and just kind of hope that at some point with the DNA testing to get to the point, for 6 years we were running into the problem with the DNA we were getting back from the body was too degraded to use in family tree and gen match. So it took 6, 7 years for technology to catch up to that, to where then we could finally get it done. And even that took some time. But once we figured that out, that's when we discovered he was not Caucasian. It was actually, African American, which completely changed all the stuff that I was doing and looking for who I was looking at. So no, there was no one thing that just said, aha. It was a multitude of looking at the whole picture and coming up with when they finally said, hey, we think this is who it is, we still couldn't take that as part of a total answer. I had to go out and start talking to family members and start building that connection to be able to get the DNA to compare with our guy.
Was it this one where you felt comfortable to say, this is him, all this news conference, or did you kind of have you pretty confident that was him before?
So when I got the phone call from Tracy back on Christmas Eve, and I was with my family, and she told me about this, and we started looking into it, I started to get my hopes up, but I also knew not to totally lay into that. So when we got the DNA from the mother and we got it into family tree and gen match, that's when we started to get a little bit more solid leads. And even after that, when they came back, told me that she was probably the biological mother of our deceased, I still had to send her DNA then off to UNT to be compared with CODIS so that we could get a confirmation there, so that we had 2 different labs looking at this and saying, yes, she's the biological mother of your deceased.
And one one further point with that as well. So our coroner's office, Coroner Tanuzak, this is a part of the cooperation and partnership when you have matters like this is working with our coroner's office. So we do greatly appreciate their partnership in going through all of these different matters. These can be very, very, well, as you're hearing, they're very forensic intensive cases with constant changing of technology. When we look at all the different aspects and just even the change that happened in terms of the identification going from potential Caucasian, Hispanic to African American, that the prior look and review did not reach a different conclusion because of something that was in error or misapplied. It was based upon the limitations of the evidence that existed. It was the best conclusion that could be drawn from the evidence without being able to get further DNA testing to go ahead and go along with this. So you start off with that as a generality, but again, that's a real generality. With the changes in DNA that have occurred, now you're able to drill down with far more specificity and the ability to go ahead and with degraded DNA. I mean, all of us who have been doing this for a long time could tell you that it was, degraded DNA. We would hit that and we would hear that all the time in the past, and we felt like we were done. And now, when you look at all the different areas of what we can do with that kind of DNA technology, and especially for general identification with familial ties and all the different processes that can occur, it really is a fantastic new day and age. But there is a limitation, and you heard that, which is this is a scientific tool. It's only one part of it. And one of the concerns that I get sometimes with DNA, from my experience of what I've seen, we have a tendency to always want to have one item of evidence tell us, here's your answer. We want to, even though beyond a reasonable doubt is not 100% certainty or to some kind of mathematical certainty, we want that. And DNA, we hear mathematics, and we say, oh, now that gives it to us. Well, DNA misapplied in an investigation can just as easily lead to convicting the innocent as to acquitting the guilty. You must have the investigation occur with it. You must have all those things go together. And when you do, you have one of the most powerful scientific tools that you can ever have. But that's why, and you heard it emphasized, you have to have the investigation go with it. This is a step in the process, and it's a great step. And it has corrected errors from past scientific aspects that were not being intentionally made mistakenly or maliciously made mistakenly by experts of the past in areas such as hair analysis or bite mark analysis or things of that nature. It's just DNA technology has grown so much and is so much more conclusively better in giving answers to the unsolvable, or previously to things that had ranges, or had here's a broad degree of probability, that we can get to where we need to be. But again, it means nothing without the investigative work with it. It only provides you one part of an answer. And so that is why in announcing this publicly today, we have phase one. Phase one, it took us many years to complete. Now it's on to phase two. And phase two has already started underway, but now we are confident in asking the community for information because of the certainty that we have in the identity that we have at this point in time of Mr. Queen. Yes?
I would just like some clarification on the DNA Go Project website. It says the estimated post-mortem interval was 3 years. That would mean that he was
So what you're seeing there is the anthropologist from Mercyhurst comes out, they excavated the bones. He gives a postmortem, and his estimate was 3 to 10 years, okay? I can tell you though, in working with this case and looking at people, we were looking at people from 1980 that went missing in York County that could have fit the parameters. And when I called him up and said, hey, how tight are you on that 3 to 10? His response was, I'm not that tight on it. It can be 18, it can be 20 years. Once the bones go to complete skeleton, it makes their job much harder to do that determination. So his 3 to 10 is just an estimate, and it really can't, he's told me he's had ones where he said 3 to 10 and it was 18 years that the person was missing.
You're hearing there as well what we were talking about, the limitations of probabilities when you get into degraded situations and why you need that further investigative aspect. 3 to 10 years was a good probability to help us be able to pursue within an investigation. But it's not a conclusory aspect where you would walk out and say, here you go, without having something further. And that's what this is an example of, and why you always have to be prudent in waiting and making sure that you're verifying everything. We would not be here today announcing this if we weren't convinced beyond any and all doubt that we have the identity of David Queen. And we need to be convinced of that. Because if we didn't have that kind of certainty, then that means that there's a family who reported their loved one as being missing, that we just took them on an emotional roller coaster without us being certain. That is not just, quite frankly, it's cruel. We are certain. And it took this long to be certain. And you take however long it takes to have that certainty. There is nothing worse than going ahead and offering opinions that impact real people, real families, and take them through trauma based upon, hey, we think, we feel, we believe. No, no, no. We will only do that when we're able to look at you and say, we're certain. Because we know what this now means. This stirs up trauma. And we're very aware and conscious of that. So we're here before you today saying, we are absolutely certain this individual who was killed and whose remains were found in West Manchester Township, this is David Anthony Queen. We are certain of that. And with that, I believe that that was all the information that we had to provide. I know I appreciate everybody for your questions. Again, certain things we had to limit with what we could say. I think we've exhausted pretty much the scope of what we can say, but we really appreciate it. And again, if anyone knows anything, whatever you think of the information you have, err on the side of providing it. Call West Manchester Township Police Department, contact them, ask for Detective Sergeant Conway, and provide that information. We will follow up on all of it. With that, we thank everyone. Thank you.